Okay, so I am somewhat conscious after the I don't know how many hours in the plane, well over 24, uh, getting up in Moscow at 2:30 in the morning to fly 4 legs from Moscow to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Detroit, Detroit to Seattle, Seattle here. But I made it. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the trip. So it started with going to Central Michigan University, where Guy Newland had arranged for me to give some talks. And there I met your mother and 2 sisters, which was fantastic. They were so interested and came up afterwards and thanked me. And, you look like your older sister. And but it was really lovely meeting them, and after all these years. And I spoke 2 public lectures and then in 2 of Guy's classrooms, and it was really nice. I mean, being with the young people, and they're interested in the questions and things like that. And then one of the public talks was on life as a Western Buddhist nun, and that was the talk that most people attended. It was co-sponsored by the religious department and the women's department. And also on the web, it's gotten like well over 1,000 clicks. I was really surprised, yeah. So it seems like it's a topic people are interested in. And then I stayed with one of Guy's colleagues and, got to walk around a little bit. And then Guy took me to the airport, so that gave us 2.5 hours to chat in the car, which was very good. And the Detroit airport, you have to go down 2 flights to find a bathroom. So it's just a warning if you ever go through there. Yeah. Yeah. And then I flew from there to, where did I go to? To Amsterdam, and then to Valencia, Spain. And I spoke at the FPMT Center there, the Nagarjuna Center in Spain. And my old friend, Venerable Paloma, translated. And it was lovely to see her and catch up on all the news and see their new center. They have a very nice center that, they just got it and they're building it up and everything. And then the day before I left, the talks went very well there. Before I left Valencia, the Geshe invited us out for tea, and it was very sweet. And at the end, he gave me a picture of Jay Rinpoche, and he said, "This is." He told me, he said, "This is very auspicious that I'm giving this to you, because it's indicating that Jay Rinpoche's teachings will spread in the West." So that was very nice. Yeah, he was quite a nice Geshe, and then we took the train to Alicante. I gave a couple of talks there. And it was in Spain that Kaz learned how to make real chai from Venerable Paloma. So now I think she's sending the recipe, she sent it. So now you have a recipe on how to make real chai, not the kind of stuff that we get here, which is most of the time I don't drink. So I got hooked on chai again because Kaz learned how. So every morning I got a mid-morning thing of chai, which was very nice. Because I had to continue working on the book. I thought I was done by April 1st and I was going to send it in. And then I thought, if we can cut down the words, we can get some more chapters in volume 1. So I started looking at it and cutting down words, and then, I got to check just that chapter and that chapter. And so I wound up working on a lot of chapters, but so far I've cut down 13,000 words. So that's good. Yeah. And then I said, I'm done, but there's still one more chapter I think I need to go through. But it's almost ready, and thank you for putting the diacritics in. That's been extremely helpful. And then we flew to via Madrid to Frankfurt. And I got to tell you that most of the airlines were good. Aeroflot, we took Aeroflot actually at one point, and that was very nice. There's 2 airlines that have even less space for your legs than the U.S. airlines do. You know, Transavia and Iberia. And I had trouble getting in. Now, I'm small compared to these 6'4" guys, which I don't know how they got in the seats, because I was like trying to, you know, if you're sitting against the window, I mean, how you get in the rows? I had trouble. I don't know what the guys do. These are the highlights of the trip. Don't worry, I'm working on renunciation. But what was really nice about the trip is we started in Spain in the south and we went northward. So the trees, the springtime was just coming to Spain when we were there. So the trees were just blossoming. And then each place we went going northward, the trees were just blossoming. So we caught early spring through the whole trip. So in Frankfurt, it was with Tibet House, and Daya Rinpoche is their spiritual guide. And I had met some of the people there before, particularly one monk, and they're lovely people. And that center is very active. It's not only a Dharma center, it is a Tibet cultural center. And so they have groups of students from the public schools coming many times a week to learn about Tibetan culture. And so Venerable Sundru, the monk who's there, is very busy, you know, teaching to all these student groups who come, which is really fantastic. And the group there was also very good. I was teaching from Russell's and my book, you know, the Living with an Open Heart, which is the title published in English, and An Open-Hearted Life, the title published in the U.S. And so I was teaching from that, and then we had meditations from that, and people really liked it, and we had some really good discussions, and they put us up in a little apartment that they rented, which was also where Song Rinpoche had stayed like a few weeks ago, because he was in Europe. So that, you know, was nice. And we had very good discussions over lunch with some of the people, and went to the director's home for supper, you know, for medicine meal the evening before we departed. But I was really impressed with the group. I mean, people have been studying a long time. You know, it was really very good. And so we had a public talk, and then a weekend retreat that was held at the center. And that was a lot of fun, you know, with the people and everything, and getting to know what Germany was like now, and talking about the migrant situation and so on and so forth. And we learned that Frankfurt is one of the most international cities in all of Europe, and they have like over, was it 120 or 145, but, you know, different nationalities and languages of people living there, which was really nice. And we saw this when we were walking around too. Yeah. So they said that people there, because it's so international, there was nobody cares, you know, all the immigrants coming, people were very happy. They said the resistance from the immigrants happened in the countryside where there are no people from other countries. Yeah. But slowly, hopefully they're working through that. And then we took the train. I love traveling on the trains. It was very nice. To Hamburg. And there we were, I gave a public talk on, what was it? The title that was listed was not the title I was supposed to speak on. Yeah, they got it mixed up. So, but it was on women in Buddhism in the West. Yeah, so I gave a public talk on that. And of course, all the people are asking about you, and they're so happy that you're a bhikshuni, and you know, they were quite excited and everything. And everybody sent their love, and I can't pronounce German names, nor can I remember them, but so just know that they all love you very much. And so he gave one talk in the city. And I was able to meet up with Alex Burson. We had a nice talk. And also in Spain, I met a couple of, an older friend too, an old friend from Dharamsala who I hadn't seen in 25 years. Yeah, and then we went out to Semkeling, which is the retreat center affiliated with Tibet Center in Hamburg, and I led a weekend retreat there. So that actually was more than a weekend; it was 4 days, and that was on Precious Garland, and I was really hoping to kind of get through kind of 1.5 chapters. I did a third of the first chapter. You know how I am. But people were very interested. Again, good questions, good discussions. Venerable Thupten Chodron translated for me into German. So we had Thupten Chodron squared, there. And then they're starting a nunnery. That's walking distance from the retreat center. So there's 3 nuns there now. They're setting it up as a contemplative nunnery, so they're not going to have guests and training and things like we do, although they are hoping to enlarge it, and so they want to buy the piece of property next to the one where they have already built a house. But it's very nice. They interviewed me twice, about ideas and how you start a nunnery and how you do the discipline and things like that. So we had that. There was another interview by Matthias, who was the young man who came here, who, last year, who did an article for a magazine in Germany. So he also did an interview. There were a lot of interviews. I can't even remember when they were and where they were. But those 2 I remember. Again, very nice, and stayed in the retreat cabins from their center, and and took some long walks in the afternoon. But it was very busy. That retreat was busy because we did, just in addition to the teachings and stuff, we did posada together one afternoon, an interview another afternoon, visiting the nunnery a third afternoon, and then I also saw Jampa Sadran, and we went for tea and had a long discussion about this nun situation as usual, and research and Buddhist stuff. It was very good to catch up with her. And then as soon as the retreat ended, we got in a car and went to the Hamburg station and got on another train and wound up in Aarhus, Denmark. And that was the coldest place, of the whole trip. Actually, the last day at Semkeling was cold, but Aarhus was colder. It's the 2nd largest city in Denmark, but you wouldn't know it. It doesn't feel like a huge city, especially when you go to Copenhagen afterwards. So they treated us so nicely there, and again, an apartment, and Metta cooked all this wonderful food, and then there were 2 evening talks there. Again, the audience really enthusiastic, listened well, and one afternoon we went out to meet Martin Van Beck, who's involved in the Contemplative Science Project with Mind and Life Institute. So I had a really long talk with him. And it was very interesting. He thinks that some of the science that's coming out is not up to par for proving some of the things that are claiming to be proved. Means the science isn't definitively proving things, and they organize some studies without using a proper control group, and when his group used a proper control group, they got different results. And so he was telling us this whole thing, about what's his name, the French monk. Mathieu Ricard, about him being the happiest man in the world, that they had done some research in Richie's lab a few days before His Holiness came, and did some tests on Mathieu, and came up with this. But he said it's never been written up, because when they went back over and looked at the data, it didn't prove that. It was good data, but it didn't prove that. So it's quite interesting that, now Mathieu has this reputation, but there's no scientific study about it. But I still believe Buddhism helps in all these areas, But it was quite interesting to hear from somebody else who, wants to see more control groups and things like that. Of course, he also believes that, meditation helps. But it was very nice to speak with him, because both of us were quite concerned about the whole mindfulness movement and its relationship to Buddhism and so on and so forth. So I had some very good discussions with different people along the way about that. It was very good. And then we took a train to Copenhagen, and it was another center there that sponsored us. Wonderful people. Again, that we were put up here. It was in the director's, who's a nun, but she had a daughter, like way back when, before she ordained, in her daughter's flat. Very nice, staying there. And the group was totally delightful. It was really nice in Denmark. I didn't need a translator because everybody spoke English. So they got twice as many teachings and, much closer feeling with the people. And delightful people. I mean, really, at the two Denmark centers. And especially in Copenhagen, the audience was a little bit younger. And many people, requested refuge. I also did refuge in Frankfurt to one person, in Spain to somebody, but in Copenhagen there was a whole group of people. So we did refuge at the end, and it was a very nice feeling, like really bringing everything together and tying it together. And they have a beautiful center, and in both centers in Denmark, they're under the general guidance of Laka Lama, and his view is very non-sectarian, so they have teachers from different traditions, and people get along very well, and it's really good, yeah. And then we flew to Russia, and it's hard to believe that was just like 8-9 days ago. This whole trip, Kaz and I would, every once in a while, it's like, well, a week ago we were here, but it seems like it could have been a year ago, because so much had happened in the last week. Russia was stupendous, just wonderful. Lots of people came. There were two public talks. Yeah, lots of people, like over 100 people. And then a retreat, again, a 4-day retreat. Mostly young people. The group is mostly young. Young meaning 20s and 30s. Enthusiasm over the top. And they have two monks, and Venerable Tenpa he was the translator, he's kind of leader of the group. I mean, having him translate, it was like having Pato in Mexico translate. The energy just flowed very easily. He understood my jokes, he understood my slang, and he just was right on it, very good. And then the other monk, Venerable Tenzin, he might be able to come here later this year. Yeah, really sweet. And then they, quote, the food, I must say, was fantastic in Russia. I mean, I usually don't notice the food. I couldn't tell you what I ate in most of the other places, but in Russia they had all this fresh produce, and I mean, I've been to Russia before. I went in 69 when it was still communist, and I went in 96. So already that's quite a while ago. But the living standard has really improved and, drastically in all those places, even though they're having a lot of economic problems now because of the price of oil is down and because of the what do you call them, that Europe has put on them because of the thing in Ukraine. What? Sanctions, yeah. So they're having some economic problems because of that. But we walked around and we walked to Red Square and we took an evening walk in the park, and I saw Nerea there, and she sends her love and she's doing really well. Yeah, and just that group was really good. And the retreat center where they had it was a retreat center for the Dzogchen group of Namkhai Norbu, who is quite popular in Russia, Ukraine, that kind of area. But the people there, again, in Russia, everybody goes to all the teachers who come. Because they say, we don't have so many teachers. If we get good teachers, everybody comes. So it was very nice. All the groups get along well. We did our retreat there, and then the last afternoon, I gave a talk, to a much larger group that included some of the other groups that were meeting there in their Vajra hall, and people very respectful of the Sangha, from the Dzogchen group. So really delightful, really quite nice. And Kaz is a fantastic assistant. I mean, she gets the AAA, quadruple A star status. Really, really very good. And so I got quite pampered, and coming back as a spoiled brat, but her work really made the trip very easy because she could think ahead and anticipate what needed to be done, and she just went ahead and did it. And so I didn't have to worry about things or remind her or think about a lot of the logistical stuff. So it was a very, very good group. I met people everywhere who said that they watch our BBC talks and they listen to our online teachings and they know about the website. So so it's really reaching a lot of people, and people very happy about the Abbey existing. And it was so touching, in Russia. None of them have been there. They do the dedication prayer that Serka Rinpoche wrote for the flourishing of the Abbey. Yeah, they do it. So, and I didn't have to say anything. I just said, lead. I asked Venerable Tempa, lead the dedications, and he does it. And he, the chanting, I take refuge prayer, he does with a chant similar to ours. It's beautiful in Russian. It's a very nice melody. He had to change it, tweak a few things, but very nice. So really good trip. Yeah, and feeling it was quite worthwhile. And I benefited, and I hope other people benefited from the talks. And just to see what's going on in Europe and, people's enthusiasm for the Dharma and wanting to learn the Dharma. So that's it. And a long talk. You're hungry.